if you do not successfully complete that probationary period and your probation is revoked, that not only could you be revoked for that 5 years, but the court could actually adjudicate you guilty, find you guilty, not under first offender, but just straight guilty, and impose up to 20 years imprisonment.
State of Georgia versus Mr. Miles Farley. Mr. Farley, please raise your right hand.
Y'all might as well go ahead and let Miles Farley free.
Given the matters pending before this court will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth.
We've seen the evidence.
Okay, put your hand down.
We've seen the evidence, my guy.
I'll let you sign before I ask you more questions.
It wasn't him.
And Mr. Body, maybe reposition the mic while he's doing that.
Yes, Judge.
And this is the attorney that actually got arrested for
Mr.
having.
Farley, did you state your true, correct, and legal name for the record?
Farley.
And Mr. Farley, are you at this time taking under the influence of any alcohol, drugs, or medicine?
No.
Is there any medication that you take daily or regularly that you have not taken today that would affect your ability to understand why you're here?
No.
And how old are you, sir? And how far have you gone in school?
You see, I got a bachelor's degree.
And are you able to?
also speak into the mic, please?
26 and got a bachelor's degree.
And so, are you able to read, write, and understand the English language?
Yes.
Right, here goes
Do you
the plea.
understand you are charged in indictment number 22 SC 183572 with count 1, conspiracy to violate RICO, count 49, which is related to the homicide of Mr. Drinks, counts 50 and 51, which are both participation in criminal street gang activity, and then count 54, which is a possession of a firearm and the commission of a felony. Do you understand you're currently charged or indicted with those counts?
Yes.
I mean, do you understand that you have the right to plead either not guilty, guilty or not guilty to these charges? And if you pled not guilty, remain
Why is he
silent, you may
taking a
receive
plea
jury
deal?
trial.
Yes.
And has your attorney, Mr. Menendez, gone over the rights that you're waiving by taking a guilty plea here today, sir?
Yes.
And are you satisfied with the services that your attorney has provided?
Yes.
And do you need any additional time to talk to your counsel about any of the facts and circumstances regarding the charges and the circumstances of this case?
No.
And Mr. Menendez, do you waive formal reading of the indictment?
So waived.
Do you waive any and all defects in the indictment?
Why is he
including
taking a
any
plea?
with respect to your client's name for the purposes of this hearing or plea?
Yes, so waived.
And Mr. Farley, has your attorney spoken to you about the minimum and maximum penalty for the counts that you're pleading guilty to?
Yes.
And he advised that for count 1, RICO, the minimum is 5 years, the maximum is 20 years?
Yes.
And do you have any questions as it relates to that count, the single count that you'll be pleading guilty to?
No.
And sir, do you understand that this is a negotiated plea of guilty, which means the state and your counsel will offer a joint recommendation
These niggas lacking.
as to the sentencing recommended for the count that you're pleading guilty to, so the court does not have to follow that recommendation, and she can sentence you as she sees fit up to the maximum for the charge.
Yes.
Do you have any questions about that?
No.
Come on, man.
Is he just pleading to count 1 and y'all are null processing the rest as a part of the agreement?
That's correct, Your Honor.
Okay.
All right,
You
well,
understand?
let's see what he gets for count 1. But still,
Mr. Farley, do you understand that
If
this
the
plea
act
may
got
be
off,
used to enhance
if
sentencing
Shannon
and
got
other
off,
convictions in this jurisdiction,
Miles
as well
Farley
as in
could
other
get off.
jurisdictions, including the federal courts?
Yes.
And do you also understand that if you are not a United States citizen, a guilty plea will affect your immigration status
This is sad,
and will
man.
result in deportation, regardless of any advice given to you by your attorney or anyone else?
Yes.
Do you understand that you waive any and all defenses by entering a plea of guilty here today, sir?
Yes.
Do you also understand that by pleading guilty, you're giving up or waiving the following rights? The right to a trial by jury, the right to remain silent and to not incriminate yourself, the right to confront witnesses against you, the right to the assistance of counsel hired by you or court appointed if you are unable to afford an attorney for the trial of your case, the right to the presumption of innocence, the right to testify on your own behalf and to present other evidence, the right to subpoena witnesses and to compel the production of evidence, the right to have the charges proved against you beyond a reasonable doubt by the state of Georgia, and the right to appeal if convicted of these charges after trial. You understand by taking a guilty plea here today that you're waiving or giving up all of those rights?
Yes.
And Mr. Farley, has anyone forced, threatened, or promised you anything to get you to enter a guilty plea here today?
No.
Why? I don't get it.
And are you pleading guilty, sir, because you have decided in speaking with your counsel, Mr. Menendez, that you believe that it is in your best interest to do so?
Yes.
And are you aware that even if you're not admitting guilt, as you're pleading under North Carolina versus Alford, if the court accepts this plea of guilty, places you in the same position as if you were convicted after a jury trial?
Yes.
Okay. And how do you plead to count one, conspiracy to violate the Racketeer Influence and Corrupt Organizations Act in indictment number 22 SC 183572?
Guilty on the Alfred.
And Mr. Farley, is this Alford guilty plea freely and voluntarily given with full knowledge of the charge that you're pleading guilty to?
Yes.
And do you understand that you may have a limited right to appeal this guilty plea conviction?
Yes.
We looked at this indictment. All he did was pose in a picture for some videos, and then he was in the car right before Shamil Drinks got shot.
You also understand
So
you have
why
only
a
4
RICO
years from
charge?
today for a felony charge to file a habeas corpus petition challenging the voluntariness of this guilty plea.
Yes.
How does that
Challenging anything about the constitutionality of the guilty plea, understand?
Yes, Your Honor.
Well, I want to make sure he
Yes, ma'am.
It's all right.
Do you also understand, sir, that you have 30 days from today to file a direct appeal from this guilty plea, and until the end of
Come on, Miles.
this term of court to file a motion seeking to withdraw this guilty plea, which doesn't mean that the court necessarily would grant it or not. It's just that's the time constraints that you have to file under those areas of the law.
Yes.
Okay. Do you have any questions about that?
No.
Okay.
All right, and your attorney, Mr. Menadas, will represent you until 30 days from now or the last day of this term of court, whichever is later. And he would be the one to file any of those things on your behalf unless he is allowed to withdraw before that time. Understand?
Yes, ma'am.
And just for the record's clear, I just provided to Ms. Persefield the indictment, which was signed by all parties as it relates to
All right.
the defendant's guilty plea to count
Thank
one, conspiracy to commit RICO. Your Honor, has this case proceeded to trial,
Terrible.
the state would have shown beyond a reasonable doubt that between January 24th of 2013 and May 8th.
That
Right. And so what we have ultimately is that there is no evidence, none.
That's what the state would have shown, Adam. Come on now. We already have one guy that you said committed this murder. Man, he's not guilty. He was found not guilty. What are y'all talking about?
2022, this defendant, Mr. Farley, in conjunction with his fellow co-defendants, co-conspirators, known YSL associates, did unlawfully conspire to conduct and
BS.
participate directly and indirectly in the enterprise that YSL. In doing so, they did it through a pattern of racketeering activity, conducting and participating in YSL with the same common objectives, which were to
Nasty
preserve,
work,
protect, and
man.
enhance the reputation of the enterprise, that being YSL, doing so by protecting the power and territory of known YSL
Just Whitaker's asleep
stronghold
already.
areas through acts of violence, also through
He's up there
other
sleeping.
means such as social media, posting messages, images, and things of that nature. That's what the state would have shown as it relates to Mr. Farley and his involvement as it relates to the enterprise YSL and his association, Your Honor.
All right, I assume at least some of the evidence would have been the same as or similar to what was presented at the trial of some of the co-defendants that just
Jeez.
Was completed a couple of weeks ago.
Yes, Your Honor, very much.
All right, so I'll take that into consideration with regard to the factual basis as well. All right, anything else from the state?
Nothing further. Oh, The recommendation as it relates to, or the joint recommendation that the parties would make to the court, it's my understanding that the defendant obviously would like to tender his plea under North Carolina versus Alford, and I neglected to.
That's an Alford
Farley,
plea.
but it's also my understanding he qualifies for the first offender or treatment, and he is asking that the court treat him as a first offender, which the state has no objection to either, and the recommendation would be 5 years to be served on probation.
Interesting.
All right. Mr. Farley, has your attorney discussed with you the First Offender Act and what all that means?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And have you all discussed the potential upsides and downsides of that?
Yes, ma'am.
So he qualifies for first offender. That's not bad.
If you successfully complete, if I sentence you in accord with what has been negotiated, if you successfully complete the probationary time without having any violations of your probation, that at the end of that, you would not be a convicted felon. Understand?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, you understand as well
That's not
that
bad.
if you do not successfully complete that probationary period and your probation is revoked, that not only could you be revoked for that 5 years, but the court could actually adjudicate you guilty, find you guilty, not under first offender, but just straight guilty, and impose up to 20 years imprisonment for the count to which you are pleading guilty under Alford. Do you understand that?
Just Whitaker said, you better behave yourself. And Jen said, I don't understand pleading guilty to RICO when the other defendants were found not guilty. Make it make sense. Well, now it makes sense. He gets to get out of jail. He qualifies for first offenders. So she gives him, let's say, this would be amazing. She gives him time served plus 2 years. Well, he's got to keep his nose clean for 2 years. And then he's not a felon anymore. Gets to get out of jail. Not bad. But he's not going to get time served plus 2 years. That's the issue we run into. Well, let's see what Judge Whitaker says.
Despite having a vast network of opportunity from his
Let me rewind a little bit. And we'll get into Yak Gotti's hearing here shortly.
and taking things this far, Your Honor, putting his foot down when he was faced with this, government abuse. But what he did next, Your Honor, is he went to Miles College, and then despite having a vast network of opportunity from his bachelor's degree in business, he returned home because he is a family person. His dad is here in the yellow hoodie in the back. He's also an entrepreneur. That's where Miles gets a lot of that from. And so, Your Honor, when Mr. Farley made this clothing brand, he built off of the hat. In 2020, he made an LLC for Make America Slime Again, and he's actually employed by a record label to be a handler for musical artists. And then he used those associations and that presence to promote his brand and to have his clothing be as visible as possible. He started making custom pieces for different artists and different people. And Your Honor, if you remember from the evidence that was presented, Mr. Farley's always wearing his own clothing, and he's only ever promoted his clothing for the purpose of himself and his business and his family. And so that's why, Your Honor, I think the most sincere and appropriate way to resolve this case is under Alford. The state, in that respect, did the right thing with its discretion, dropping the murder case. Mr. Farley had nothing to do with the death of Mr. Drinks. And so, Judge, he's been on house arrest. He's been totally compliant. He's not a gang member. He's never committed a crime in his entire life. But he is wearing an ankle monitor. He is confined to his home. It's better than jail, but I think we all know after COVID that that's not necessarily ideal. And he just doesn't want to go to trial. And that's why I think Alford is a textbook case for this type of situation. And so if the court has any questions, we would just ask this honorable court to accept the plea as negotiated.
Okay, well, I mean, it would be determined by a jury at trial whether his involvement in the case is only because of his marketing and business acumen or something further than that, something criminal. But in tendering a guilty plea under Alford, Mr. Farley, you are admitting that while you do not believe you have committed the crime of conspiracy to violate the RICO Act, you are acknowledging that there is sufficient evidence that the state could present to a jury from which a jury could conclude that you are guilty of that crime.
Judge Whitaker saying, like, listen, I've seen this movie 4 times already. You sure you don't want to wait a minute and just get a not guilty like Yak and Shannon did? Stay on house arrest, be good, come to court. Yeah, if you don't want to run that risk, like I said in the chat, I get it. Just take this, keep your nose clean for however many years that Judge Whitaker is gonna give him. And then you got a first offenders, no felony. It goes away.
Understand that, right?
The legal system's amazing.
All right, I find there to be a factual basis for this plea. I will accept it under Alford, and I'll permit it under the First Offender Act. And I find the plea to be freely, knowingly, voluntarily, intelligently entered with an understanding of the consequences. And in accord with the negotiated recommendation, I am going to sentence you to 5 years probation. And as we discussed before,
not bad.
How you perform during the next 5 years of this probation is going to determine whether you finish that. A person who can say that they do not have any felony conviction, or whether you might be spending some time potentially incarcerated. So it's entirely up to you how you comport yourself and how you choose to behave going forward. What ultimately will happen at or before the end of that 5 years. Do you understand that?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Are there any special conditions to this probation? Have y'all negotiated any?
I can't imagine.
Have any real special conditions, obviously, other than follow the law.
Okay.
He's a first offender.
All right. Well, that is the sentence of the court. I need to ask if you have a weapons carry license. Do you have a license? Okay.
No, ma'am.
All right, that's fine. And while you cannot have
College-educated
any
young
firearms during the course of your probation, if you successfully complete all your probation, you'd be able to possess firearms again. All right, Mr. Farley, good luck to you. I know that you have a very successful business, and let's just make sure that that business is on the up and up and that you are following the law. All right, good luck to you.